Hi guys, welcome back. Now, in the last video, I promised you we would start with a blank piece of paper. And I meant that literally. So here it is, a blank piece of paper. So the blank sheet of paper is the best part and the worst part of any project. You've got a completely fresh field. You can do what you like and go where you like. But at the same time, it's kind of terrifying to look at that blank sheet of paper because you know that you're all at the beginning. I mean, where do you start? Where do you start with a new project? I'm going to divide this page into 3 sections. I'm going to call this one the backlog. Now, throughout this entire channel, I'm going to run a backlog because every time we start doing something, ideas will occur to us. It will occur to me or to you. Hopefully you'll comment and I'll know. And I want to add those onto a backlog so that we get to them eventually. So let's call this the backlog. Okay, now we'll figure out how to represent this later, but for now, piece of paper. And this one is going to be the Salty Vagrant website. That's going to be where the courses, the support material and stuff like that for the general courses that are on this channel will be. And this one will be the project website. Okay, so that's going to be our e-learning system website. Okay, let's start with the backlog. We've already got some stuff to put on it. So we started by setting up our environment where we have Vagrant. We have VirtualBox. Oops, hope you can spell VirtualBox. And that reminded me that we should talk about virtual machines. Okay, we have, what was the other thing we set up? Oh, Git, yes, so we want Git on our backlog as well. And this brings up the whole issue of source control. So we've got SCM, version control. SCM is actually a bigger project, but yeah, we'll get there. Okay, so we've also got that we are going to use Vagrant and VirtualBox to set up our Linux environment. So we've got some Linux stuff to cover, and that will be a big subject. So for now, that's our backlog just from the very first video. So we've got a fair bit to talk about already. Now, we're going to set up 2 websites. We're going to set up the Salty Vagrant website and we're going to set up the project website. So now the project website will eventually become the product, whatever that is, okay? So that will be something that will evolve over time. And the Salty Vagrant site will be based off the project website, so that will also evolve over time. Now, for now, we're going to start out with the most basic of websites because we've got plenty to talk about just based on that. Okay, so we're going to talk about HTML. Okay, so we've got the hypertext markup language. We'll add that to our backlog. We're going to have to talk about some basic networking. That's going to lead us into, possibly, things like TCP/IP. Importantly, we're going to have to talk about domain names. And that leads us on to subjects like how do you acquire a domain name? So we're going to have to talk about registrars. We've also got the technical side of it. So we're going to talk about DNS, which is the domain name system. Okay, how does it work? How do we use it? How do we set it up? Now, the other thing we're going to need for our website is a host. So we're going to have to talk about hosting. Now, we could use something like WordPress or Squarespace or one of these other commodity brokers that sell us content management system space where we can set up basic websites. But we're talking here about IT systems. We should really learn from the ground up. We should know what we are doing. We don't want to rely on those guys. We're going to set stuff up from scratch. Okay, so we're going to need all of this stuff. Okay, so we've got that. Now we're going to talk about, or we're going to have to talk about some more general stuff. So, for example, we will talk about the difference between working in teams, both large and small. They're very different. We'll talk about working as an individual for a client, for example, as against working as an individual on a private project. Okay, so we can talk about teams and individuals. Okay, and there are challenges to all of these. Okay, so we've got challenges to working with large teams and small teams, challenges working as individuals for clients or for ourselves. Okay, then we've got mundane stuff like documentation. Okay, how do we document things? Why do we document things? When is documentation good? When is it bad? When have we done enough? There are a lot of things to talk about with documentation. May not be the most exciting thing in the world, but believe me, you'll thank me for it later. Oh, that reminds me, we're going to have to talk about client server. There's another thing on our backlog. You see how this works? Stuff occurs, goes on the backlog. Okay, I think that'll do for a start of a 10. Now let's talk about these websites. The Salty Vagrant website will be initially dealing with these videos and any support material. Okay, so we're going to have to accommodate courses, and I want to break those down into modules, into sessions, and into lessons. Okay, so we've got courses, modules, sessions, and individual lessons. Okay, and I think that makes sense. For now, I may come back and revise that. That's okay though. I'm going to want to put support material. Okay, so we got support material. And we are going to want video, maybe podcast audio, who knows? So let's say media. Okay. Material. Now, support material is things like any PDF files with lesson notes, that kind of stuff. What about the project website? Well, obviously that's something that will develop over time. So initially, we're going to do a basic website, and I will take you through, in subsequent videos, we'll go through how we're going to build the website, how we're going to deploy it, how we're going to host it. Okay, and we'll go through every single step. So that will be step by step. And that's as much as we're going to say about that in this video. We're going to have to deal with some of the things on this backlog so that you understand what we're doing when we set up the project website. Okay, hopefully that satisfies the requirement for a blank sheet of paper. We've made a start. It's very high level, I admit, but as you can see, we've got a lot of work to do as we mine down to start producing the first website. Next, we'll move on and we'll start dealing with some of these details as we build out the basic project website so you can see where we're going. Okay, now I said we were going to develop an e-learning system, and some of you will be saying, well, hang on a minute, a simple website isn't really an e-learning system, and you're quite right. But the whole point about this series of courses is that we're talking about system development, and virtually no system starts out the way it ends up. Consider Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg apparently in a dorm room started out with a basic idea. He didn't start with Facebook as it is now. In fact, he didn't even start with Facebook as it was then. You know, it was something that was developed incrementally. You start with something basic, then you change it, and you add the technology, you add to it, okay? And we have to get used to that idea that unlike a lot of places where you go along and they say, oh, this is how you develop application X. Okay, we're not in that. We're developing a system. So that means that we are going to have to deal with the situation where we have something already in place that people are using. And we need to know how to manage getting from there to getting to the new place. Okay, we're going to have to deal with migrations. We're going to have to deal with all those kind of complexities. So we start with a basic website. Okay, and then we will add slowly to it over time. We'll learn each of those components and how we get from whatever we have at the time to the next generation, to the new system. Okay, so that sets the stage. Now it's time to move on, and we'll start actually learning some of the basics and setting them up. Okay, so that we're ready to rock and roll. Excellent. Okay, guys, I'm looking forward to next time. This is an exciting project, and we'll get started on step 1 in the next video. See you then.